I recently had a chance to hop down to LA for a quick trip and had just enough time to check out a really cool spot recommended by one of you guys. On today's episode, we're going to talk Plov. We're going to try at an Uzbek institution at the edge of Beverly Hills, take a tour around a super cool market, and of course, we're going to learn how to make it all at home. After you walk down this random alley, you're going to see a row of black and white BMWs ending at the platonic ideal of a hole in the wall. This is Chaikona Lasat Grill. Take a seat and enjoy the experience. The menu is simple, and our neighbors highly suggested a couple dishes. I've never had Uzbek food before, so this is going to be a first for all of us. We started with the samsa, which were wonderfully crisp on the outside and stuffed with juicy lamb. The manti had a similar filling, but these guys were boiled instead. We also had to order one of these fresh breads that they bake in the back. It's kind of got like a bagel-like texture, which was great for dipping in the yogurt sauce for the kortov. All of these dishes are insane and definitely deserve their own episodes, but this is what we're here to try. This is plov. More specifically, this is beef plov, and it might be the new plov of my life. Sorry. It's super fluffy, and each grain of rice is doing its own thing. The meat is super tender, and there's just a little bit of sweetness from the carrots and some nice warm spices. I think I taste a bit of cumin. Overall, this is just a super comforting dish, and it definitely helps that we're eating in what looks like a random hallway crossed with Grandma Chicken's living room. We paired it up with a tomato and onion salad, which is great for cutting through some of that richness. Per usual, this is a 10 out of 10 recommendation from Control 747, but if West LA is just a little too far for you, no worries. Plov perfection is only minutes away. But before we get back to the kitchen, let's do a little bit of grocery shopping. I found this place randomly searching on Google Maps, and I've never been here before, so let's check it out. This is International Food Bazaar in San Jose, and it's an absolute hidden gem. They've got a bunch of Eastern European, Middle Eastern, and Central Asian essentials. I love the olive bar. These spicy ones are amazing. They also have kebabs, which I'll have to try on a different day, but while we're here, go ahead and grab yourself some carrots, and then head over to the meat department. I'm using boneless beef shank today. The high collagen content is going to make it super tender later on, but feel free to use something like chuck or short rib instead, which has a little bit more fat, but they're still laced with that wonderful collagen that keeps things tender. On your way out, grab some dried fruits. I went for these black currants, and also get some rice. In Uzbekistan, they have their own regional varietals for long grain rice, but here in the States, our options are pretty much limited to jasmine or basmati. We want to choose something that can withstand a decent amount of time and heat without falling apart, while also staying nice and fluffy, so this parboiled or sela basmati rice is going to be perfect for us. Before we head home, I wanted to point out that there's a Persian bakery at the end of this strip with some pretty insane stuff that we're definitely going to cover on a future episode. Back at home, it's all pretty straightforward. First off, cut your meat into decently even pieces. I like to go thick and chunky to make sure that it stays moist, but do what you want. In a heavy bottom pot, add in a good amount of oil and get to frying. Traditionally, you would use rendered lamb fat, and a lot of recipes call for sunflower oil, but I pretty much only use avocado oil at home, which is nice and neutral tasting, which also works great for this dish. Also, remember to season the meat a little bit at this point with some salt. It's going to take a while, but basically keep an eye on these guys and turn them every once in a while until they turn nice and golden brown. At this point, you can slice up some onions and then toss them in with the beef. There's going to be a lot of caramelized proteins and sugar stuck to the sides of this pot, so be sure to use those onions to sort of deglaze everything. Once the onion has softened, you can add in your carrots, which have just been cut up into a relatively thick julienne. Also add in some water, and it helps to speed things up if it's already boiling. While that's going, add in a couple spices. I'm putting in a little bit of cumin and some caraway seeds. Bring that up to a boil and then drop it down to a simmer and then let that coast for a good 30 or so minutes while we talk history. Plov, pilaf, pulao, paella, biryani, they're all sort of siblings in what I like to call the Great Wall of rice. The idea of cooking rice in a seasoned broth is said to have originated somewhere, sometime around the general territories of ancient Persia, give or take a few centuries. Real specific, I know, right? There are a lot of claims as to who first decided to dump rice in a stew, but what is known is that the first account of a mostly modern version of pilaf can be found in the writings of a very famous Persian scholar named Avicenna, or Ibn Sina. He described it as a sort of medicine in one of his medical books, and then listed a few different versions of a basic rice dish. At some point in the last few thousand years, pilaf found its way to the people of Central Asia, where it became a point of national pride for quite a few countries in the region. You'll find it at weddings, birthday parties, or in a roadside cafe for a quick lunch. The version we're going to try today is based off of a few home-style and restaurant versions I found from Uzbekistan. Speaking of, let's go finish off the dish. The broth has been simmering for a while now, and I'm just starting to realize that this pot is way too small for this dish, so we're gonna switch to this bad boy. There are huge restaurants in Central Asia that employ massive cooking vessels called a kasan to make hundreds of portions at a time. There are home versions that you can buy, but a nice cast iron Dutch oven works just fine for the rest of us. At this point, we can add in a whole head of garlic. I made sure to trim the roots off of this guy, they tend to have a little bit of dirt trapped in it, and I also added in a few spicy peppers, but that's totally optional. Let that simmer for another 15 minutes to give the garlic a head start, which gives us plenty of time to take care of the rice. This is some sela basmati that I rinsed 3 times and then allowed to soak in some warm water. After about 15 minutes, you can strain and then layer that rice into the pot. Add in some more water and try to get that liquid to come up just above the rice. You don't want it too dry, which will leave us with a texture reminiscent of itty bitty Legos, nor do you want it too wet, which will turn our plov into mush. Wrap up the lid with a towel to get a good seal and to prevent excess condensation from dripping on your rice, and then lid everything up. Put it on medium heat, and after about 20 or so minutes of cooking, most of the liquid should be absorbed into the rice, at which point you can turn the heat to low, pile the rice up, and then cap it with an overturned dish, which is going to help the rice trap heat and moisture and finish cooking. After about 10 minutes of low heat, I like to turn the heat all the way off and then let the pot coast in its residual heat for another 10 to 15 minutes, after which you can open it up, take out the garlic and meat chunks, which we're just going to chop up nicely for plating. Look how tender that is. Just pile your plate with a ton of rice and then top it off with your sliced meat and the garlic bulb and maybe a few chilies. That looks amazing, but how does it taste? Well, the meat is super tender, yet still moist, really nice, and of course the rice is the star of the show. Every grain is separate and super fluffy, perfectly cooked. The light fragrance of the spices show through, and the mild sweetness from the carrots perfectly balance everything else out. Well, that's going to be it for today. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to hit that like button down below. It really helps us out. And again, huge thanks to Control747 for the idea. I love making the stuff that you guys suggest, and I've got a huge list of great recommendations I can't wait to try out. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.
Oh, my dad? Oh. He worked for an airline. Doesn't exist anywhere, but Northwest airline. So he was the person who was in charge of making sure the luggages got in and got off. So whenever I was sick, my dad, I don't know, he must have had a stash at work and he just kept them in his drawers somewhere, because whenever one of us was sick, my dad would come home with a small can of tangerines. He would always tell me, oh, I brought this for you, only for you, right? He apparently said that to my brother and my sister. We all thought we were getting these secret food, special food from my dad whenever we were sick. Oh, you poor thing. Here, okay, don't share it with your brother or sister. I did not know that.